This is Live Bet Saturday on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
All right, well, here we go. Against my will, it is Live Bet Saturday. Jonathan Von Tobel and Will Hill with you for the next 3 hours. Get it against my will. We are very much excited for the Final Four action, which will get started at the top of our final hour together. We have a lot of baseball that will get started in the next couple of minutes, and that's actually where I wanted to start. We'll get to plenty of Final Four, Will, but we have a quartet of games getting started in the next 10 minutes or so, including your Yankees. How are we feeling? The Bronx Bombers in action. They get the Pittsburgh Pirates here. Market has not really budged too much. $1.50 or $1.56 in favor of your Yanks. 9.5. The move was to the over. It opened 9 on the overnight. How we feel about Stroman getting the start against Falter? Anything here?
I mean, not great. It's a situation they don't have much pitching when you roll out Stroman and Carrasco and Will Warren. Fried's okay. I'm sure he'll be fine. But Rodon, it's really not big-time pitching for a team that was the short shot in the American League to come out of that league and represent the American League. I played Bailey Falter under 5.5 hits allowed. I just think, man, 6 hits is a lot. Third time through the lineup, these teams are very conservative in terms of letting their pitchers go. So if he throws 80, 85 pitches, somewhere around 5 hits, and gives up a couple walks to get up the pitch count, something like that, I could see him being pulled. So I just think 5.5. I thought that hits was a lot. I would lean towards the Yankees, the 155, 160 or so. It was a little expensive with Stroman out there. I don't play a lot of run first inning, but this might be one with 2 pitchers who are not great. Stroman is not overpowering at all. He was decent in his first outing on Sunday against the Brewers, but the Pirates throwing Falter, who's hittable. Stroman's very hittable. So I'd look towards a run first inning, and I do like Falter under 5.5 hits. What about you? What are you playing anything here? No, nothing here. I will say, and I'll play this so we can keep track of it. Diamondbacks and Nationals, Eduardo Rodriguez versus Mitchell Parker. I agree with the line move here. So we saw this open up at $1.35 in some spots in favor of Arizona. We're starting to see some buyback in the other direction with Parker getting the start. Totals up to 9.2, by the way, we should mention. But theory here is that Eduardo Rodriguez is Eduardo Rodriguez. He played his way in 2023 to a contract, but this has not really been great in a D-backs uniform. And again, in the first start, wasn't particularly great. Was nearly the same pitcher that he was last year in just 5 1/3, but over 50 innings and 10 starts last year. Wasn't great. 5.04 ERA, 4.57 FIP, pretty much identical splits, a little bit higher on the FIP through the first start here. I just don't really like Eduardo Rodriguez. And when you look at Mitchell Parker, a guy that last year over 151 innings actually did some pretty good stuff. The 4.29 ERA wasn't great, but if you look at the underlying metrics, 3.85 fielding independent, gives you some pretty good starts, and I think he'd be able to match up here against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Give the Nationals at least a bigger chance to win this game. So first 5 Nationals was a play for me here in this window for us. I believe Marte went on the IL too. Did I see that? Let me double check. You would know, but maybe. He left early yesterday. I had an eye on that game as they played Washington Friday night. I believe he landed on the IL, so that's a big bat. That's out of the way. That helps your handicap. I agree with your handicap. If I was going to play Arizona in some form or fashion, team total over 4.5 might be a good way to go. They can hit. I watched them a lot against the Yankees this week. It's a good lineup. It's a deep lineup. Obviously, Marte hurts that. But no, I agree with your handicap. I've been impressed with Arizona so far, just up and down the lineup. Was also looking at some of the props in that game. Did you have anything for like hits allowed, walks allowed? Do you look at those markets much, or do you guys even have that in Vegas? Yeah, we have them. I don't really dive into it a lot. I'm pretty simple, especially this time of year where there's a lot going on, NBA, Major League Baseball, all that kind of stuff. I tend to, and that's actually why I like to bet first 5s. I'll call it, I'm a lazy millennial, right? I want to whittle down what I'm trying to look at here, and when I can just handicap these 2 starting pitchers and looking at these starting lineups and how they might go, and I get the instant gratification, not instant, but I only have to sweat through 5 innings as opposed to 9 and deal with that bullpen BS. That is generally what I like to do, especially early in the season in Major League Baseball. Plus, after 5 innings, if it's tied, there's a couple things. You're handicapping the pitchers, and if the pitchers after 5 innings are pretty much not going to be a factor, you just want your money back because you didn't handicap the bullpens. Your handicap was on the starting pitchers. So I always use the example. You bet Scooble on the first 5 or the Tigers on the first 5 when Scooble's pitching. When he leaves the game, do you really want a piece of the Tigers? You probably don't. That's one thing. And then there's just there's a human element too of, like you said, at our age, I don't know. I just don't have the patience to sweat out these games. I know they're a little shorter now, but ghost runners and extra innings, things like that, it feels so coin flippy once you get late in the game. Now, if you're really studying the bullpens, sure, you can find an advantage there, but that's a lot more work, and that's another element to the handicap. And to me, boy, once you get into that 9th inning or 10th inning extras with that ghost runner, there's just so much volatility with that where I don't have the patience. You know what? 2-2 after 5 innings, I'm happy to take my money back. One thing I will say is these games are about to kick off, about to you get a lot of first pitches here.
Yeah.
First pitch off. A lot of crappy weather here in the East Coast. They're showing the Boston-St. Louis game. It's raining. People are bundled up in coats. So cold weather, rainy weather, not conducive for offense. So keep that in mind when it comes to your handicap. And that's one. Speaking of additional things to handicap, if you can search these weather reports and figure out games where you're going to get rain in like the 3rd, 4th inning, and they're going to start on time but might hit a delay. First of all, be careful of playing pitchers over strikeouts, pitcher over anything. And sometimes you parlay both starting pitchers under strikeouts, under walks, under whatever. Because if you hit that sweet spot where you get an hour and a half delay in the 3rd inning, you get both those pitchers out of there. They're probably not going to come back in if the delay's an hour plus. So always keep in mind the weather here. And it does look like weather is a factor. I know Pittsburgh, the Yankees, there was concerns about getting the game in. It looks pretty sunny there. St. Louis, Boston is bad. Mets and Blue Jays are later. So cold, wet, rainy here on the East Coast.
By the way, what do you make of Bellinger coming off of the bench for a 2nd straight game? Yankees superfan Will Hill.
I don't think it's performance related. It said something to do with his back, so I don't think it's performance related, is it?
No, I was just looking. I was watching it without any sound, and they had noted that he was out of the lineup again, so I figured you'd have a better read on the situation. I want to note, too, really quickly, speaking of weather, it doesn't look too bad. Dodgers and Phillies, great game last night. Dodgers comeback snuffed out on a strike him out, throw him out against the Phillies. That was a tight one, 3-2. Now they're back at it. Totals 8.5. It's pretty much a pick I'm looking at right now on the board between Roki Sasaki and Aaron Nola. So very excited to see a 3rd start here for Sasaki. But through 2 starts has not gone particularly well. 2 appearances, 4 2/3, 5.79 ERA, 6.56 FIP. What have you seen from Sasaki?
Not much that's good. I didn't watch much of that first start. That was the one that was early in the morning. I had him last week. I think it was against the Tigers Saturday, so he's had a week off here. The command hasn't been there. He's just throwing. His ball to strike ratio is terrible now. Is that small sample size? Is it? I know there's some talk of you come to the U.S. from Japan, the ball is different. There's some adjustment there, maybe. I did play him under 3.5 hits allowed. I do think that with the pitch count being up, again, cold, rainy weather, 5 innings maybe you get out of him. And if you get some of these longer innings where you guys got to go 25, 30 pitches an inning, I mean, he only threw an inning in the 3rd, an inning and 2/3 last time, so maybe not the longest outing. I would expect him to bounce back and pitch better. His control in Japan was pretty good, under 2 walks per 9 innings. So I think there's some flukiness to it, but it is somewhat alarming. How about you? Is this something that his performance is alarming over the first 2 starts here? Or something, nothing, anything?
I would think that I'm with you that it's a little, and this is what gets me, right? Overall, in terms of just pitches thrown, 77.8% of his pitches, opposing hitters are making contact. So, that's pretty tough luck when you're talking about 77% of the time a guy's just making contact with your pitch. When you talk about throwing it in the strike zone, 87% of the time they're making it. Over 50% of the time when he's throwing it outside of the zone, they're making contact. So like you said, he's just giving up a bunch of contact. And maybe that's just fluky at the start of the year. I would tend to think a guy that if you looked at some of his numbers over there in Japan, that they weren't anywhere near some of these numbers, that you're probably going to regress back to the mean. I know it's better hitters to an extent, but I would assume that you're probably going to come back to the mean here and get a little bit better in terms of performance from him. Was he the one that I was looking at? Was he the one that was crying after one of the performances?
Well, I didn't see that.
Yeah, okay,
I didn't see that. I don't think so.
Danny confirms he was.
Okay.
That's not a shot. I want to say that actually your New York brethren were like, this is why he couldn't have made it out here. Like, all right, let's relax here a little bit. The kid actually cares about what's going on, but very much a lot of pressure on Sasaki. And I did like the thought of this is why he chose a small market like L.A. Like, okay, let's relax here a little bit. Is that how they sound out there, by the way?
Yes, it is.
It's exactly.
Do you have any feel for this game today? Good game, Nola versus Sasaki. Do you have any feel for this one? As we got one out here in the top of the first with bets up.
I mean, I think pricing wise, I've said this on primetime quite a bit. We're at the point with the Dodgers already where to me it would actually just be Dodgers opponent or pass. You know what I mean? Like these prices at times. The other night we took advantage of it on primetime. We were doing. It was the Braves-Dodgers finale. So I had plus 115 on the plus 1.5 with the Braves in that game. And the team total for them was 3.5. Over was like plus 120. So I do think we're getting a little out of whack with the way that we price some of these games. To have Nola out there, I know it wasn't the best first start for him, but to have Nola out there at a near pick or some spots a small underdog, I would take my chance with Philly in that spot.
Yeah, it was interesting because the Braves are expected to win, 93, 94 games, and they're sitting there on like the 4th, 5th day of the season. They're $2 underdogs. It's just wild to see these prices. It's tough, though. It's unlike a football game where if the Chiefs are playing, the Titans, and the line is jacked up, well, you can cover without winning. In baseball, it's like, oh, man, this could be extremely inflated, but it doesn't win. It doesn't win no matter what the price is. Now, I know over 162 over a long haul, it matters, but over one night, you could – you get plus 400 on this team against the Dodgers. It should only be plus 180. But, well, if it doesn't win, it doesn't win. It really doesn't matter.
But like betting these money line sports, again, that's the thing, right? The point spread is a great equalizer. In this one, you're just saying, I think that bad team has a better shot to win than you say. I still need that bad team to win, though. And it's like, all right, like, I don't really want to do it. But that's why I think in certain times, like in that instance, Braves are not as bad as their record, and if I'm going to get the Braves plus 1.5 and plus 115, I think that's something where you're going to take advantage. So we'll see. We are underway, by the way, in that one, and the Yankees and Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as these other matchups that we have in Major League Baseball, are underway. All right, when we come back, we'll get to it. The Final Four, it is tonight. We have a lot on the line for all of these teams, but one could argue I have more on the line than any of them. No, we'll get our look at the Final Four matchup. And, of course, we have a great slate of guests with us today, too. Adam Burke's going to join us at the very bottom of this hour, 4:45. He's going to be with us, as well as Josh Inglis, at 6:15 p.m. Eastern, to get through a look at everything from a betting perspective. So don't go anywhere. It's Live Bet Saturday.
This is Live Bet Saturday on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
About 2 hours away from tip-off for Final Four action between Auburn and Florida. Very much looking forward to it. A very big one and an entertaining Final Four as a whole. Will Hill's here. It's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm live from Burke, Canada. If you want to come by and say what's up, I'll be here until 4 o'clock and a little bit after watching Auburn and Florida. All right, Will. Let's take a look at these numbers as we are approaching tip-off in a couple of hours. And let's start with the first game, Florida and Auburn. Worth bringing up because we're starting to see a little move in both games. But this one, hooks are disappearing. Circa down to 2 in favor of Florida with a total now at 159. So any initial shock at the hooks disappearing in favor of a little bit of action, it would seem, on Auburn?
No, I mean, I guess my only thought would be that the closer you get to a game, maybe people think that there's some groups that can get down more, get down as much as they want. Although with Final Four, I would think the limits would be pretty big. But that's always something you think about, where maybe it's just one group coming in on Auburn taking the points, and that's why I like Florida. I don't look. It's not like a typical college basketball Saturday in January where there's 140 games and you can find 4 or 5 that you think the lines are maybe soft or a little bit off. This is 2 games. These are very public games. The games they're taking a ton of limits. These are pretty sharp lines. I like Florida here. I think that to me there is concern about Broome, about the elbow. I know he came back in last week, but was that just sort of a token appearance where the adrenaline got him through the game and it's going to be an issue coming into this one? I think both teams have advantages on offense. I go back to that game February 8th, the day before the Super Bowl. Florida was able to generate 33 threes. They won decisively. They won in Auburn. That was against the Auburn team that was healthy, peak of its power. So I don't know. I think Florida, they haven't played great in this tournament, which obviously you can use against them too. They could have lost to UConn. They really should have lost to Texas Tech a week ago. Their best game, though, was against Maryland, and that was with more time to prep. And they've got the extra prep time now. They've struggled with one-day prep against UConn, against Texas Tech. Those games were both the second in 3 days. So maybe Florida's sitting on a big-time performance here. I don't think this line is like woefully off. Like, oh, man, you got a cut in line here to bet Florida. They should be laying 4 or 5. I think the line is fair. Maybe even you could make the case that it's a pick 'em and you shouldn't be laying 2. I get that. But I'm going to go with Florida when I ultimately have concern about Broome's injury. What say you as someone with a big Auburn ticket in your back pocket there.
So I think there's a couple of things. I was pretty surprised. I think in general what strikes me about this, and I was texting this with Tim and a couple of others, but if you were to do some man on the street stuff, right, and you were to just ask them folks, like if I were to walk around Bar Canada and find some folks that were interested in this game right now, and just say, hey, like generally, like who do you think's in better form coming into this game, Auburn or Florida? I think most people would still pick Florida. And I think that surprises me. We did a great job, Bill does a great job in our newsletter getting picks from some of our listeners and whatnot. And we had one in there that struck to like the point that I'm making, which was our guy Artie was in the email today, said that if you look at Auburn, they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. And I was like, I don't know. Like Auburn's covered 3 straight games coming into this thing, right? It's something that I would disagree with. So I feel like the general consensus is that Auburn is scuffling coming in, but Auburn's the one that's covered 3 straight. Auburn's the one that has limited opponents 3 out of the 4 they've played to less than a point per possession. They've been very consistent defensively. When it comes to the Broom stuff, it's a smaller version of the Clippers deal. I always say, right, I don't fault anybody for not believing in the Clippers because of what's happened. I don't fault anybody for thinking or being fearful of John Broom's injury. I also would say that it's his offhand. It's not his shooting hand, which is a very big deal, or the shooting arm. You mentioned he came back in that game, looked pretty good. If you go back and watch, not only does he hit the 3, but he gives pretty vigorous fist bumps when he's done doing it. I don't think the arm is too bad here. I think that this team's going to be pretty fine. And what I think is really interesting for Auburn heading into this game, Will, despite the fact that they've covered these 3 straight games and the positivity on defense, they've shot 31% from 3 in this tournament. They have yet to have a really dominant shooting performance from beyond the arc. They're a team that shoots nearly 37% from 3. One would assume at some point a good shooting night is coming for one of the better shooting teams in the field. Guys like Chad Baker-Mazara have been wildly inconsistent on offense. Again, you assume that maybe one of your better players is going to kind of break out here and give you something else in a tournament in which you have over-exceeded market expectations. I don't know. Like before the tournament began, I liked this Auburn team, and I'm just going to kind of stick to the guns here and see what happens. But it's not like, as you can hear in my voice, I am overwhelmed with confidence in this side.
Yeah, as much of a dud as this tournament has been, and it really has. I mean, I love this tournament more than anything, and part of it is just such high expectations. I can't wait for the upsets and the buzzer beaters and the Cinderellas.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
No, I do. I love that part of that tournament. I love getting those Cinderellas.
You like watching St. Peter's get into the Elite Eight and get smoked by 20?
I love the story until that happens. No, there's definitely a trade-off. That's what we love. That's why people. That's the popularity of the tournament, though. The unexpected happens. No, the popularity of this tournament is not the fact that it's a basketball tournament. It's the stories. It's the fact that the underdog has a chance, and then obviously you do get like the Butlers and the George Masons in the Final Four, and then St. Peter's loses by 1,000. So your point's 100%. Accurate in terms of like eventually it hurts the tournament when you got these teams.
I think Butler UConn in the national championship game was one of the greatest basketball games I've ever seen.
I don't think it was. I think it was
53-41 and it sucked.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. We should have 4 really. I mean, look, we got 4 outstanding teams. This is, from a basketball standpoint, this is incredible. These are 4, not just in terms of this year. And we talked about it for months now since we started talking college hoops when football ended. That really, there's 4 teams that can win it all. And once you get past the 4, it was a stretch. And with the 5th, we agreed was Texas Tech. And then after that, it's like, St. John's, maybe Maryland. It's all, you kind of have to squint really hard to really believe in it. So it's played out that way. They're all here. I think we're in for a really good 3 games, a really good 3 matchups, I would hope here.
Oh, so interesting. So there's a couple of things there. First off, we also have the Circuit College Hoops Challenge. I very much need Auburn to win this game to be able to hawk down Paul Stone to win this thing and go a long way toward doing that. Auburn is the best bet. But the other thing, so Will, to that point, and I think I brought this up to you last weekend when we talked, or whatever it was, which was I came into this tournament with that logic. Like, look, I think the best teams are the best teams. And I don't think there's really any question about this. And that has shaped the way that I have played my way through this tournament. And I was telling Tim this the other day. I think it's why it has led me to at least having a shot at catching Paul Stone. Like, I've done pretty well in the tournament up to this point because I think we kind of saw this coming. But I bring that up because now we're here, which is the Final Four. The 4 teams that we have deemed these were probably going to be the teams all along outside of maybe one like you mentioned, Texas Tech. A lot of people keep going back to, well, the favorites keep coming in. The favorites keep coming in. Yes, that's when there was much lesser teams in the pool. Now there's not. Now it's the 4 that we all expected. Do you think that trend continues? Is there a line of demarcation between the perceived 2 best teams, Duke and Florida, and then, of course, Auburn and Houston? Because I don't think we're there. I think now it's all no holds barred. These are all the 4 teams we expected, and they're all pretty even with each other.
I would give Duke a slight nod just because they do have the best player, and they just have so much length. With Malawach, I think is underrated. Defensively, what they did to Bama. So I would put Duke a slight notch above the other 3, but your point is well taken. These are 3 powerhouses. This is a situation where if anyone was holding up the trophy, any one of these 4 teams holding up the trophy Monday night, cutting down the nets, I wouldn't blink twice. I really think any 4, and I don't think that's controversial or hot take or anything. These are all 4 1 seeds. Let me ask you, the team you'd be most surprised winning it Monday would be who?
If I was forced to pick, if you're going to take my family hostage, as you usually do, and tell me I have to make a selection.
No, like who would surprise you the most out of the 4 winning?
I think Auburn.
Really? Okay.
Well, given the Broom injury and the unknown, like again, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but with that factored into it, I think that would be like you said, of the 4, what would be most surprising? I generally fall in your camp though, right? Which is like all 4 of these teams are championship contenders.
Yes.
So I don't think it would be the craziest thing.
Do you have these in Vegas? Have you looked at these? We can talk about this when we come back. Most outstanding player. Flag is plus 110. And then you get Clayton, Cryer, and Broom. Basically, they're saying if those players have their teams win it, those are going to be the guys. Do you buy that, or you think somebody can swoop in outside of those 4? You think there's any value anywhere else?
I think there's value somewhere else, but I'm going to save that for the other side. I want to ask you really quickly, before we move off this game specifically, did you have any thought on the total, which is now down to 159 at multiple spots?
No, I like the under the Duke game. I would lean under here, but nothing I bet. How about you?
I bet under 160. So I did have an actual bet on under 160. Again, thought it was a little high. Going back to how good Auburn has been defensively, I think there's something there, but we will see if that is the case. The VSiN Summer Special is here, and it's the best deal of the season, folks. For just $59, get full VSiN Pro access to everything we do from now through August 1st. How about that? That's 50% off the regular monthly price. From Augusta to the NFL Draft, MLB action, NBA, and NHL playoffs, Kentucky Derby, VSiN Pro's got you covered all summer long. Sign up now. Get the expert picks. Best bets for the Masters, betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access on the Watch app, and our Kentucky Derby betting guide, NFL betting guide, when it drops this summer, and more. Every sport, every edge, one price, full access now through August 1st for just $59. VSiN.com/subscribe. That is VSIN.com/subscribe. On the other side, we will get to the answer to that question. Is there value anywhere else in the most outstanding player market? I would also caution anybody that we have been burned to this market many times before because voters are mouth breathers and can't look past the best player. But we will discuss that when we return here on Live Bet Saturday.
This is Live Bet Saturday on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Kike Hernandez with a 2-run shot to left gets the Dodgers up on top of the Phillies. Phils had drawn first blood, but it is now 2-1 with the 2-run shot off of Nola in the top of the second and 2 outs. So the Los Angeles Dodgers looking to continue their winning ways. In-game numbers right now with the Dodgers up on top. They're a $1.70 favorite in-game with a total of 9.5 with that 2-1 lead. As I speak, Yankees are going to drive one in here, so that will put them up on top 1-0 in the second, waiting for an adjusted in-game price. But New York draws first blood in that one. I believe that was, I can't believe it, I don't know if it was Dominguez or who, but either way, it is a 1-0 lead for your Bronx Bombers. Will Hill.
Yeah, that's one where we might see some more scoring in this one with Falter and Stroman going. I don't think that's going to be the last run to cross the plate. So
you're not a very big
good start
Stroman
for the Yankees.
guy.
Not a big Stroman guy. Good start though, and good start for Sasaki because he was in some early trouble. Second and third, nobody out with Harper up, and it's like, man, here we go again. Horrible start against the Tigers. Horrible start in the opener against the Cubs, and it's going to be another disaster start. Well, he struck out Harper. He gave up a run with a sacrifice, and then he pitched out of it. So one run, when you get second and third, nobody out and Harper up, in that small little ballpark against that lineup to escape with only 1 run is a good job. So maybe Sasaki is settling in. Some throw nasty, looked like a splitter to Harper. The bottom just dropped out of it to get that strikeout. So Dodgers lead 2-1, as you mentioned, and Washington up 3-0. So nice little handicap you had there. You're in good shape here. Washington batting in the bottom of the second. They put up 3 on the first on Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yep. So that is the one, again, first 5, about plus 105 on the Nationals there. We're sweating that out, and a pretty good start. Can't ask for much better. I would ask for like 10 runs. That would be pretty good. But I will take 3 as we head into the bottom of the second inning. All right. So we're talking about most outstanding player. For those who are wondering what the odds look like, Cooper Flagg, the favorite, and these are numbers courtesy of DraftKings that I'm listing off to you right now. Cooper Flagg plus 110, Walter Clayton of Florida at 4-1, LJ Cryer at Houston at 8-1, Johnny Broom at plus 850. Pretty much represents where we're at from a futures perspective on the board, right? And within, of course, the odds for each of these teams. 4 best players for those teams, there you're going to get. Now, where do you find the perceived value? Where do you get the guy that, hey, if it's not going to be lead dog for said team, who else could steal this from you? I said I had an answer. I think that's actually the pretty obvious one. And I think that if I were to ask anybody, hey, if the best player for all 4 of these teams isn't going to play, give me a guy who you think could do it, I think a lot of people would say Todd Pettiford for Auburn. The kid's been absolutely fantastic. He's actually taken on a much bigger role in terms of scoring than Chad Baker-Mazara, who has been non-existent outside of the Creighton game for them. He is closing games out in a really big way. Now, this stretch does go back a little bit farther than the NCAA tournament. He's actually been playing pretty well for them for a while. But I think Pettiford, especially with the Broom injury looming, Will, if they win this game against Florida, and if they make it past whoever they play in a national championship game, and if Johnny Broom is really feeling the effects of an off-arm injury, it would be potentially a dominant on-ball player like Pettiford who can create his own look for multiple areas. 25-1 you can find Pettiford at.
It's a pretty good number. That's one guy that I had in mind. The other one was Con Knippel from Duke for, you look around 35-1.
Yeah.
For Knippel, just because, look, good stats last game, 21, 5, and 6, and he had a 23 and 4 before that. Flagg is going to be a hard one to overcome just because of the name brand recognition. He's such an outstanding player, but I don't know. Do you buy there's a case for Knippel, or is it just too much? These voters are just too simple and say it's Flagg's team. It's going to be Flagg's award.
So I would say generally there's always a case to be made for some of these teams. Having said that, I will take you back to 2022 when I think it was McCormick who had a couple of big games in the Final Four for Kansas, including against Villanova. Yeah, he had 25 points and 10 rebounds or thereabouts against Villanova, helping them win that game. And Ochai Baji, I had a brain fart there. Ochai Baji ended up winning that award, right? Because he was like the forward-facing player. He was like their guy, and the voters just gave it to him, even though the resume was much stronger for a guy like McCormick. There are plenty of examples of guys who are just the big names still winning the award because they are the guy. And I think of all the big names to go against, man, it is hard to go against the guy that's going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft.
This might be a stupid question. Who votes on this?
If I know correctly, isn't it in-arena media members? I think it's a small amount of them. I'll double check, but I think it's okay. It might be similar to, if I remember correctly, the like Eastern Conference, Western Conference Finals MVP, where it's like I think 9 media members that are in the building that vote for it.
So like when Jimmy Butler got it over Caleb Martin, that type of scenario?
Yeah, I'm glad you still remember that. What's irritating about that, too, is Reggie Miller. See, you're going to get me started. During the final game, do you remember? Reggie Miller on the broadcast calls him MVP and then votes for freaking Jimmy Butler.
Tough one.
Oh, my God. Don't get me started.
Tough one.
Yes, so it is voting by media members, as we know. We're just wondering exactly how many vote for it, because I think that's going to be the real question for most outstanding player. Very interested to see who it is. We'll find an answer to it specifically. Or if you're watching up on X, you can send us at not the Will Hill, at not me JVT, at me JVT, and at VSiN Live for the specific format of how these voters vote for most outstanding player of the year. So I think that's it. I think these guys are pretty simple when it comes to this. Best player on the team wins it, and I think it's going to be hard to really overcome it. Now, let me ask you this. This is a nice dovetail. We talked at length about Auburn and Florida. What about Duke in Houston? You and I were one of the few who actually used Duke in the contest this week, laying 5. Houston was one of the selections. Having said that, I want to be very fair and say that mine was all purely out of strategy because I had heard a Paul Stone podcast and knew that he was going to be on Houston. So it's not like I feel strongly about Duke. I just found out that he was going to be on Houston, and so because of strategy and I need to catch him, I used the opposite side. Now, having said that, and I don't know if your ears were burning yesterday, but I said yesterday on primetime, if I were to be put in a Will Hill situation where I have a gun to my head and then knives to the throats of all of my children, and they were to say, hey, pick a side here or else, I would pick Duke. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to lay like 4.5, 5. We talk about this all the time, Will. Even if this is a tight game inside of the number with Duke leading most of the way, at the end of a game like this, when you get to free throws or anything like that, you're a couple of free throws for Duke, a missed shot for Houston, another couple of free throws for Duke. You're talking about potentially covering this number, even if Houston's covering the whole way.
Yep, that's why I landed on Duke. I just think they have enough length, athleticism to disrupt what Houston did, what Houston does on offense, who's, as you've talked about, more of a jump shooting team this year than in the past.
Yep.
They're so good. What they did to Bama, holding them 8-32, 65 points. And then at the other end, I think they've got enough firepower, enough explosiveness to pull away and win the game by, I could see a scenario, they're up 5 or 6 and you're playing a free throw game and they win by 7 or 8 and the cover is in jeopardy, which a lot of these games in the tournament, the number has really not been in play. Auburn, I think, closed 5.5 and won by 6 against Michigan State. There's been a couple instances. Gonzaga, Houston in the second round was around 4.5, 5, and it landed right around the number. But for the most part, these numbers have not come into effect as much as they normally would. I just think Duke is better. I think Duke pulls away. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. How much do you take from last year's Sweet 16 matchup where these two teams played? It was 54-51, rock fight. Nobody can score. No full court scenario in terms of transition. It was all half court. It was grinding, ugly. It's a new Duke team, and Houston was banged up, so I don't take too much. But I do like the under. I could see a scenario where this gets slowed down, and I do think if you like Houston, you probably parlay it to the under because that style matches. Plus, if they're covering 5, that means it's a close game, and if you get a close game, less chance of free throw. So I do think parlaying Houston with the under for at least part of your bet is not a bad idea, but I ultimately land on Duke. But what do you take away much from last year's Sweet 16?
No, not too much. I mean, you mentioned it, right? Who was it that was pretty beat up? Was it Shed that ended up hurting his ankle or whatever
Shed
it was?
got hurt right before the end of the first half when they were winning.
So I don't think I take too much. Also, you have an elite self-creator, if you will, in Cooper Flagg, who can actually do things that can really, I think, generate some offense for Duke. I wouldn't take too much of a 54-51 from last year, but I will say this. I think the overall point in terms of the way this game is played, Houston doesn't get to the free throw line. They generate second chance opportunities. They're an elite three-point shooting team. We should get that out of the way. But if you're not going to get to the free throw line and you're relying on some offensive rebounding against a Duke team that can rebound with the best of them and cut off your second chance opportunities, I think it's going to be pretty tough for Houston in this game overall. So it could maybe get a little rock fighty, but I didn't have too strong of a read on the total. I think it should be better than what we saw last year between these two and be much closer to a sweat when you're talking about that 136.5. That seemed pretty right to me. It didn't call to me one side or the other, over or under.
No, I would tend to agree. So did you play the under or not necessarily?
I don't have anything in this game. I honestly didn't have a read at all. Like you said, if this continues to kind of dip, if we get to that 4 range, because we're starting to see it, you can entice me to get in on Duke, but contest-wise, just needed it because I know I was going head-to-head with Paul Stone. So if you want to watch a little bit later, the first half of that Auburn game, the whole game is going to mean a lot, and I'm going to be on the air for the first half. So if you want to watch the sweat with us, you can watch on the VSiN Watch app. Check it out now. Watch and listen live. Check out show replays. Download it on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Very much worth your time, and if you're a VSiN Pro subscriber, which you should, by the way, we got a great deal out, $59, everything we do through August. You can check it out now. Go to VSiN.com/subscribe, but check out the VSiN Watch app. Coming up next, if you've got a pro account, we'll fire up your VSiN Watch app. You're going to want to see the lovely face of one Adam Burke.
This is Live Bet Saturday on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here at Burke, Canada, JVT, Will Hill, out in parts unknown. We are here with you until 4 p.m. Pacific time. I think that's 7 o'clock where Will is, as we are getting you set for the Final Four, tracking Major League Baseball and more. Yankees up on top 2-0. Aaron Judge at the plate at the top of the third inning with a runner on and one out. See if he can extend this lead for the Bronx Bombers. Dodgers holding on to their 2-1 lead. Shohei Ohtani at first, no outs, top of the third. Notable games in Major League Baseball. I have not checked the scoreboard because we don't have it up out here. I think we're still 3-0 for the Nationals. Yeah, 3-0 heading into the bottom of the third inning for Washington, sweating out a first five there. All right, we head out to the Progressive guest line. Welcome in Adam Burke. We'll hit some baseball with Adam as well. But Adam, of course, the story is the Final Four. We got to get your thoughts on what's going to happen a little bit later tonight. We'll start with the what seems to be on paper the tightest contest, which is Auburn and Florida. Market's starting to move toward Auburn a bit. Some twos out there, but we're starting to see some bounce back, at least in terms of the juice. Two shaded to the favorite side now at most spots with a total of 159. What do you make of this one between the Gators and the Tigers?
Yeah, what's up, boys? Good to be with you here on a Saturday. Look, statistically, the profiles of these two teams are very, very similar. 3-point percentage defense, exactly the same. Effective field goal percentage defense, almost exactly the same. Effective field goal percentage offense is the same. Very, very comparable teams here, to be sure. Now, Florida does have a higher rim and three rate. They're better at getting to the rim, and they take more threes than Auburn does. But Auburn is still above average in terms of rim and three rate, so it's a nominal difference at best. Look, guys, to me, this kind of sets up like how you bet the Super Bowl, right? If you like the dog, you just take the money line. If you like the favorite, you just lay the short number. I really would be surprised if the spread comes into play here for this game. I kind of lean a little bit towards Auburn money line just because the two teams are so close together. I know a lot of people have talked about Florida maybe being in better current form than Auburn is, but look, Auburn's held 3 of their 4 opponents in this tournament to under a point per possession. They've been really, really strong on the defensive side, and while their offense didn't really shine against Michigan and Michigan State, their defense absolutely did. So I kind of lean a little bit towards Auburn, but man, this is such a tight game, and again, two teams that, as you mentioned, are very, very close together.
Auburn, I'm sorry, Adam. Duke and Houston is another one where the line is ticking down. We're down to 4.5 in a lot of spots. Are you of the belief, like a lot of people, you can't get to this number, it's just too inflated? Or the other thought is that I just don't want to step in front of this Duke team. It's too reminiscent of UConn of last year, maybe even UConn of 2 years ago. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, this Duke team has been phenomenal throughout the entire season and also throughout the tournament here. Obviously a lot of us had questions about this Duke team because they were playing well in the ACC, but it was the ACC. It was not a good year in that conference. But the thing about it was Duke didn't sweat many games. They were blowing teams out for the most part, and they kind of had a bit of a question coming into the tournament. What would happen if they were stuck playing a close game? What if they had a game that was pretty competitive? Well, they had one against Arizona, and they passed that test. Then went ahead and blew out a very, very good Alabama team. I like Duke here. I know it's kind of square. I know it's kind of the public side in this game, but I don't see how Houston has the same success stopping Duke that they've had stopping other teams. The reality of it is the Big 12 was not a good shooting conference this year. They were 11th in 2-point percentage offense. I think they were 8th in 3-point percentage. So, while that's better than the national average, it's still not what you would expect from one of the 4 power conferences in college basketball. Duke can just create so many shots from all over the floor. Houston cannot get to the rim. Their shot share on close twos, under 25%. Their 3-point shooting has saved them this season, and it's the big difference between this team and Kelvin Sampson's other teams. But I'm not sure how well they're going to shoot in this giant venue here in the Alamo Dome, and they can't get to the rim as a backup plan. So to me, it was Duke. I realize that Houston is an elite defensive team, and that could cause problems for the Blue Devils, but Duke's got too many different scoring options for me. I laid the 5 earlier in the week, and I guess I'm not surprised to see it come down, but I still wouldn't back off on my Duke side.
When we talk about these shooting backgrounds and what this is going to affect on these games, I keep hearing people talk about this. What is it? What is going to affect them? What do we see here in these shooting backgrounds that generally makes it so hard for these shooters on these sites, Adam?
Yeah, it's a little bit different for the power conference teams because, they're already playing in a pretty decent-sized venue on their home campus, or, they're kind of used to playing some of these spotlight, neutral site games early on in the year, stuff like that. But it's just different. The lighting is different. You've got some depth perception issues because the seats just kind of go so far back and just kind of feel like they go on forever. So it can be a little bit tough sometimes, particularly if you're taking a contested shot to, kind of hone in on what you're trying to do there. I realize a lot of it is typically muscle memory. And by this point, I mean, these teams have played almost 40 games. Maybe it's not that big of a factor. But when you have a team that is so reliant on mid-range and three-point jump shots like Houston is, it's got to be a concern for me. Look, I mean, they were 18 of 48 from three in the 2 games they played at Lucas Oil Stadium. So They were still fine for the most part there. But, I think Duke's also going to be pretty good at challenging their shooters.
Adam, we were just discussing most outstanding player flag, slight plus money, plus 110. Then you have Clayton, Cryer for their respective teams, and then Broom, obviously. Do you think it's as simple as if those teams win, it's one of those 4 top guys? Could you see somebody coming out of nowhere and winning this? Is there value in general in this market in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, right? Because, you have to try to figure out, are the voters going to look at this just in the vacuum of the NCAA tournament, or are they going to look at it for kind of the year as a whole, if that's sort of, the tipping point between 2 guys that are very, very equal? And if that's the case, I mean, you're going to have to look at a guy like Cooper Flagg here, right? The one thing I would say is that I think some of the supporting cast for Duke might be a little bit live here. I mean, Concanuples had back-to-back 20-point games here in this tournament, 20 against Arizona, 21 against Alabama. If the plan for Kelvin Sampson is to lock up Cooper Flagg as much as he possibly can, somebody else is going to be open to take a shot. And I think Canuple's the guy that it could be. So I think if you look at him as kind of a long shot, I think I saw some 25-1 out there scanning through X before the segment. Maybe that's the one guy that's a little bit off the pace that you take a look at.
All right, we are a few days into Major League Baseball season. Do you hate yourself yet?
Oh, absolutely. I've had a horrific start to the baseball season. And, I mean, look, you never really know coming into a season how the ball is going to play, how the ball is going to carry. Will spring training performances kind of carry over? It's been a very, very rough start to the season for me for a lot of different reasons. But one of them is simply there's too much out there to bet on. I don't have my focus narrowed in. I'm trying to play player props and derivatives. And I got a first inning bet here tonight. And, playing sides and totals like usual and all these kinds of things. Like, I'm almost psyching myself out because there's such a high supply that's out there and haven't really found my stride yet in terms of, what's working for me this season. And I'm kind of figuring out what isn't. But, it's just really, really hard to, just lock in on one thing and feel like I can, dig deeper into that market and try to find a way to beat it.
Do you think the Braves struggles are something that it's a legitimate concern, or is it small sample, tough schedule? They'll get Strider, they'll get Acuna back, and they'll be fine.
No, I think the Braves are just fine. I mean, obviously playing the Marlins is probably going to be an elixir for a lot of teams here this season. But offensively, I mean, there's a lot of guys with track records here. Harris, Riley, Olson. You go on down the list. They get Sean Murphy back here soon as well. The catcher who was hurt with a fractured rib cage in spring training. Yeah, Acuna's going to come back. Strider looked phenomenal in his rehab start here today. But look, I mean, Spencer Schwellenbach looks excellent. Yep. So, that's a guy that I took it 40-1 to win the Cy Young before the season. I think that's something that's definitely live now. Even AJ Smith-Shawver's stuff looked really good. He was a little bit inconsistent inning to inning, but his stuff looked really good. So I think his Braves team is just fine. I think they're going to be there at the top of this division when all is said and done, battling it out with the Phillies. And I mean, I was kind of waiting for their price to maybe drop a little bit more on yes to make the playoffs or to win the NL East. But yeah, I may have to just kind of swallow it here and take a little bit worse of a number than I wanted just because of who they're playing now.
All right, you mentioned you got 3 plays up on the website at VSiN.com. You mentioned the first inning one. How dare you? It does involve our teams, the Guardians and the Angels. Jose Ramirez went ham yesterday. Does it involve him, and what's the play?
Yeah, so look, I took the Guardians to score a first inning run, yes, at plus 190 here. This may be a little bit of a tricky market to find around, certain jurisdictions, but it is available at DraftKings, FanDuel, things like that. But Jack Kohanowitz, the starting pitcher here for the Angels today, he's a guy who struggled in the first inning, gave up 5 batted balls of 100-plus miles per hour in his first start. Nick Maton led off the game with a home run, and then he had a bunch of hard hit contact after that. This is a guy now that's given up 14 runs on 21 hits in 12 career first innings, 4 homers, 3 doubles. The only part of Cleveland's lineup that's dangerous is the top 4 guys. and they're going to bat in the first inning here. So I thought plus 190 was a good look on that one.
Yeah, ridiculous night last night for Ramirez in that win for the Guardians. High-scoring one, but absolutely insane. 3 homers. All right, Adam, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Have a good one, guys.
You got it, Adam.
Thanks,
Burke,
Adam.
our managing editor up at VSiN.com. Folks, Edge Boost, first ever bank account built for bettors, ensuring all gambling transactions are approved. No usage fees, no minimums. Earn cash back rewards. 100% approval for all betting deposits. EdgeBoost.bet, promo code LIVE, deposit 25, and they'll match. EdgeBoost.bet.